Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been touting a COVID-19 antibody treatment in which a top donor's company had invested millions of dollars. This is interesting. This is a story in the Associated Press. Governor DeSantis has recently been flying around the state promoting a monoclonal antibody treatment sold by Regeneron. Now, you might have heard of this, of course. Regeneron was used on then-President Donald Trump after he tested positive for COVID-19. And so, you know, it does work. So it's an effective treatment, an expensive treatment. And at the time, of course, that President Trump had taken it, it was experimental. Keep that in mind. Now, DeSantis has been getting a lot of heat for fighting against mask mandates, not encouraging vaccinations in his state, despite the fact that he himself is vaccinated. And now we have seen a massive increase in COVID-19 cases in Florida. And now we see why he is doing this, or at least a potential reason. So now it turns out that Citadel, a Chicago-based hedge fund, has $15.9 million in shares of Regeneron. So again, that is the company that makes this treatment. Okay, this is according to filings with the SEC. Citadel CEO Ken Griffin also has donated $10.75 million to a political committee that supports Ron DeSantis, $5.57 million in 2018 and $5 million last April. So he is a donor to Ron DeSantis. Gee, is it any wonder why DeSantis has ramped up the call for Floridians to seek out the monoclonal antibody treatments as opposed to, of course, wearing masks and getting vaccines? Just very, very, very curious. Very curious. In fact, DeSantis has held news conferences at these treatment sites and at a Tampa hospital touting the effectiveness of the drug if people receive treatment soon after testing positive. Here's what he said, quote, "Early treatment with these monoclonal antibodies, Regeneron and others, have proven to radically reduce the chances that somebody ends up being hospitalized. Reducing hospital admissions has to be a top priority." All right, well, here's the thing. He ignores the top ways on how to do that, which is to get vaccinated and wear a mask out in public. Those two things are actually more effective at preventing hospitalizations from COVID-19 than obviously getting this treatment, this antibody treatment, because you have to be in the hospital to get that treatment. You see what I mean? Again, experts agree that yes, keeping people out of the hospital is good, but say again that the vaccines, not treatments for people after they get sick, are the best way to do that. The Regeneron drugs, when given within 10 days of initial symptoms, have been shown to cut rates of hospitalization and death by roughly 70%. That's good. Good. I like to see that. But the vaccines authorized for use in the US have actually also been proven in large real-world studies to be 95% effective against severe illness, hospitalization. So I would take the thing that is 95% effective over the thing that is 70% effective. I mean, that seems sensical to me. Okay. Now, Dr. Leanna Wen, public health professor at George Washington University and former Baltimore health commissioner, said this, quote, "We definitely need treatments like monoclonal antibodies that can prevent mild disease from progressing to severe disease. Ultimately, though, it's still best to prevent someone from contracting COVID-19 in the first place. Monoclonal antibodies are not prevention. Again, vaccines and masks are. And yes, I'm aware that there are breakthrough infections. We all should be aware of this. I know there are some people that choose to pretend like, oh, they never said that there would ever be a breakthrough infection, but my cousin's uncle's dad, sister, stepmom had one and died. Yeah, okay, forgive me your, not believing your anecdote in the first place, but sure, yes, breakthrough infections do happen. Sometimes they even happen so bad that somebody gets, that somebody dies from it, but it's incredibly, incredibly rare after you've been vaccinated. Whereas it's much more likely that somebody who is unvaccinated dies from COVID-19 than somebody who is vaccinated to have a breakthrough infection that is deadly. To understand how this works? Yeah. But apparently, no. The people who are against vaccines are also against numbers. It's a war on numbers. It's a war on numbers. It's a war on math and facts. I know. But here's the thing. Now, this ties back to DeSantis and the donors specifically because, well, gee, wouldn't you think that if more people get sick and more people have to take the antibodies from Regeneron, well, isn't that good for Regeneron's business? Isn't that good for stock prices if there's a demand for this treatment? Doesn't that mean that a lot of people are going to make a lot of money? Interesting, right? No, I think his donors are going to make more money if people are infected and they need this treatment by not vaccinating and not masking up. And understand that the bigger problem with this is not just the corruption. Okay, like this is corruption, obviously, and somebody trying to personally profit from the sickness of other people. That's called capitalism. That's pretty normal in our society. However, what makes this even worse is that the people who are not vaccinated, the problem is they could end up incubating and introducing a more potent variant that could reduce or eliminate the efficacy of vaccines overall. Which, I guess, if you're somebody who has stock in the companies that make these treatments, like monoclonal antibodies, okay, they might make a lot of money. That might be good for them. That's, of course, assuming that they would still work against such a variant. And we don't really know. And that's something that I don't really want to play with. You know, I don't really want to test that whole thing, okay? But again, this is what it's about. If the stock price goes up as a result of more people needing the treatment or it becoming more valuable, then guess what? Citadel's going to benefit. Meaning the donors will get a nice return on investment. And that's how the corruption works. And DeSantis seems hell-bent on making that happen, whether or not it's just simply him trying to look out for his money or the fact that he's, might be in a political race where he's got to be in a dumb-off with someone else, which I think he is. I think he's running against, going to be running a primary against, I think, Alan Keyes, if I'm not mistaken. And so he's got to pump up the dumb. And that's how they do it, by going anti-mask, anti-vax, and making sure that, interestingly, more Floridians get COVID-19 and possibly die or have long-haul COVID or have other sorts of complications from COVID-19. But apparently that's a badge of honor in Republican circles. So, all right. Now, DeSantis, in trying to do that, of course, has threatened to punish school districts that require masks. He's also opposed to vaccine passports. He's currently fighting against Norwegian cruise lines who want to require passengers to show proof of vaccination. Whatever happened to the free market? DeSantis letting businesses do what they want. But business wants to require passengers to be vaccinated. Well, why should you be against it? It's a freedom for corporations. Oh, you don't believe in... Oh, okay, you don't believe in that freedom if they're actually trying to do so for public health. Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, of course, DeSantis spokeswoman, Christina Shaw, put out a statement that points out that Citadel, it's not corruption because Citadel has other investments, including in Moderna and Pfizer. Oh, got him. Got him. She said, claiming that there is somehow corruption by promoting the baseless political narrative, the Governor DeSantis supports Regeneron over COVID vaccines. Completely false, but that's another topic. Is not even logically consistent when you examine the SEC filing. Citadel holds far more shares of Pfizer and Moderna than Regeneron. Okay, you ever heard of playing both sides? Most Americans are getting the vaccine. That's good. That's what we want. And so, of course, if you have shares in Moderna and Pfizer, yes, you're going to be doing very well. But there is a really good chunk of the country, almost half of all Republicans, that are like, no, not going to do the vaccine. So there's going to be a need, as we've seen, for treatments like these monoclonal antibodies, like Regeneron. And so it's a smart investment to invest in the vaccines, obviously, And in this, it's playing both sides against the middle. You're probably going to win on both. I mean, come on. And here's the thing, too. The return on investment for monoclonal antibodies might actually be much higher because the cost of that treatment is much higher. In fact, a Regeneron treatment actually costs more than $1,000, whereas to manufacture a vaccine, it only costs about $25. No, interesting. So now the thing is, the federal government is paying for both. So people, don't have to pay that out of pocket. And that's good. That's why I push for like single payer healthcare. So that all Americans, regardless of your medication, can have that for free. Like that's the right policy. And they're actually doing it right on these drugs. But at the same time, these companies are still getting paid. They're just getting paid by the federal government through tax money. And so they're still paying, and it's still more expensive for the taxpayer to pay for the Regeneron treatment versus getting the vaccine. And plus, if you get the vaccine and you wear a mask, you don't have to stay in the hospital, which again costs money. And you are much less likely to be hospitalized than an unvaccinated person. And right now, it's important to point out that hospital space in a lot of places, especially in places like Florida, which are at 90% capacity and above, what's at a premium. So you can avoid going to the hospital by getting the vaccine. Well, that's just simply the better option, logically. But to get back to our argument, yes, it is an example of corruption. She's an incredible liar, and Ron DeSantis is deeply, deeply corrupt, and is, of course, trying to appeal to the hogs in order to win re-election. Although the biggest part of this is understand that the corruption wouldn't exist if the money weren't in politics. So I think the main takeaway here is we should continue to push to get all the money out of politics so that these, so that this corruption has a much, much harder time of happening. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.